In 2002, historian and Africanist scholar Robert Harms published The Diligent, a microhistory tracing the slave trade around the Atlantic Ocean in the 1730s. Instead of presenting a broad overview with generalized statistics, Harms focuses on a single slaving voyage, providing detailed historical context. Harms argues that studying the minutiae of local events offers a better understanding of the period's history than attempting to find a global context for each voyage. Despite historians having documentation on over 17,000 slaving ship voyages throughout the Atlantic in the 18th century, most of these records lack information about daily life on the ships or details about their human cargo. Typically, these records are limited to commodity manifests and schedules. However, the French ship Diligent's First Lieutenant Robert Durant kept a detailed journal during his voyage, complete with descriptions and over 50 sketches of trading stations and other notable sites. Durant's journal, influenced by his desire for promotion to captaincy, portrays the Diligent's captain as overbearing. Harms combines Durant's journal with a wealth of other primary sources to create a vivid picture of a typical slaving ship and its travels. The book's structure is unusual, eschewing a chronological format in favor of following the route of the Diligent. Harms delves into the micro-history of each place where the ship lands and each port where it trades. Instead of providing a singular view of world history at the time, Harms illustrates three distinct worlds: France, the kingdoms of the West African coast, and the Caribbean islands, particularly Martinique. Through the Diligent's voyage, readers see how these regions become interconnected, paving the way to viewing the Atlantic Rim as its own entity, an argument also made in works such as The Black Atlantic. Harms's approach results in a narrative that reads more like an engaging story than a dry textbook, making the book accessible to both lay readers and specialist scholars. The Diligent's journey began in May 1731 in the port of Vannes, a city in the Brittany region of France. The ship sailed to West Africa, where it sold its goods and purchased 256 slaves. From there, it crossed the ocean to Martinique, where the enslaved people were sold to work on sugar plantations. In the Caribbean, the Diligent bought barrels of sugar, which it transported back to Vannes in September 1732. This structure allows Harms to delve into the immediate circumstances at each stop. For instance, as French goods are loaded onto the ship, Harms provides a macro view of the French economy during this period, highlights the arguments French merchants made to the government to gain permission to transport slaves, and describes how these narrow trade arguments evolved into broader justifications for slavery. Upon reaching the West African coast, Harms explores the complex politics of warring African kingdoms, each striving to monopolize its access to the European slave trade. He also examines the long-term European and African connections seen in the mixed-race populations of the Canary and Cape Verde Islands, and the surprisingly low status of European representatives negotiating for enslaved labor. Interspersed with these explorations of local history and context, Harms returns to daily life aboard the ship. Nothing remarkable happened to the Diligent during this voyage. Harms uses accounts from other slave traders to illustrate the dangers of sea travel at the time. The Diligent could have encountered storms, pirates, a terrible accident, a slave mutiny, or an unhinged captain. Instead, its typical journey highlights the monotonous cruelty and barbarism of transporting humans as commodities. Harms vividly depicts the endlessly humiliating and dehumanizing ways in which the crew secured, fed, and mistreated the enslaved Africans, who were packed into tiny, unaired spaces where they couldn't stay clean or orient themselves. Harms emphasizes that, for the most part, we lack access to the thoughts and feelings of the enslaved individuals. Most records used throughout the book reflect the perspectives of the Europeans who benefited from their capture and enslavement. Upon publication, this unconventional history book was praised as a thoroughly researched piece of scholarship appealing to the general public. Thomas Ingersoll, in his article for the scholarly journal Humanities Social Sciences Online, wrote, "Imaginatively constructed, deftly and engagingly written, a model of research, the book takes the reader deep into the tragic heart of the 18th century Atlantic." I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and be sure to subscribe. Thank you.